saying that we're weeks away from a general election, but nobody has said anything about children and phones, mobile phones specifically. Emma Woolf has very much campaigned for shall we say, not the breakdown of mobile phones and not the banning of mobile phones particularly, but very much a different approach to how children are allowed to use them. Emma, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike.
So, I mean, you and I have had this conversation many times before. It seems to be, I was asking this morning the question to my producer, you know, there seems to be a sort of a growing call for something to be done. It's not quite clear what the call is for. Is there a sort of a proper movement now going for people to say something has to be done to stop children under 16 getting hold of mobile phones?
You're right. It's not clear what has to be done, but there is a real upswell. Mike, a few months ago, probably 12 months ago, when I started saying stuff like this on the talk, I would say I want a total ban on smartphones, on the internet usage for under 16s. Everybody laughed at me.
Yeah.
Now I'm speaking to more and more parents and MPs who are saying, do you know what? The internet is it's an extremely unpleasant place. I don't want my kids there. The research that's come out, which I think the Sun article touches on, the research that's coming out in the past few days about the changes, the changes that are happening to young children's brains.
Yeah.
This is babies, young children, even teenagers, the sort of enduring changes to brain activity, the addiction, the extremely addictive nature of the internet and of the virtual universe. I mean, we don't need to go through the porn, the violence, the bullying, the rise in anxiety, depression, loneliness, inactivity, obesity that we are hearing reported every day for young children. If the internet was a physical place, you would not leave your children there unattended. And the fact is, at the moment, we have very young children who are being brought up basically on screens. And, you know, it's easy to do. And I hate to blame parents, but I'm a single mother. And the easiest thing in the world would be to put my child in front of a screen and just let him, you know, the electronic babysitter. I get it. It's hard. Parenting is hard. Bringing up kids is hard. Taking their phones away is very hard. But this is something we need to do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at some of the statistics that you're quoting from there. Younger and younger children getting smartphones. A quarter of 5 to 7-year-olds now own one. According to some other figures, children's IQs are actually dropping for the first time ever. Commentators saying it's got to be down in some parts of social media or to the smartphone. Interestingly enough, yesterday, we're going to speak shortly to Kirsty Ketley as well, who I think may have a slightly different view from you, Emma. But interestingly, yesterday, there was a story in the Telegraph about that tribe in the Amazon. I don't know if you saw it. Who were exposed to the internet for the first time because they were able to get hold of it, presumably on, I don't know whether it was laptops or phones, and now they're all addicted to porn. So, I mean, it does tell you something about what's going on out there. Let's have a quick word with Kirsty Ketley, parenting specialist and writer. Kirsty, very good morning to you.
Morning.
Thanks very much for joining us. I don't know whether you're able to hear what Emma was saying there. I mean, a lot of parents obviously make a decision. I mean, in my case, I think we decided that it wasn't a good idea for children to have a phone before they went to secondary school. So that was kind of what we did. Because one of the things that parents say to me is, well, the thing is, everybody else has got one. So what are we supposed to do?
So, and I don't disagree that, you know, the internet is a terrible place and lots of horrible things happen to children when they're online. I see that loads in my work. I've been working with parents very recently. In fact, it's one of the most common things that parents of tweens and teens come to me about at the moment is screen time and usage. But for me, banning phones, you know, they have uses for other things other than just the internet. And a lot of it is social media. If we took away social media, I think a lot of the problems that we have with children and phones would disappear too. But also, I think, Emma, I did hear you sort of saying about regulating what your child is watching and how your child is using screen time is really important. And that needs to start really young. So before a child even gets a phone, they need to be in good habits with using screens. So from tablets, gaming, all those kind of things, you know, because we do give our children screens to pacify them. They become a digital babysitter. Some children, it's their default because they don't know what else to go and do. They go on the screen. So we need to be, as parents, I think, a lot stricter on rules and boundaries. And when we're thinking about giving children a phone, I often liken it to having a phone out on loan to your child, and they have to prove to you that they can use it in a responsible way. They can show you how they're being safe online. Hopefully you've taught them how to be safe online and with terms and conditions. And if they break those terms and conditions, the phone is taken away. You know, Children use phones for family tracking apps. They're very popular amongst parents now. Where I live, we live in a very rural area. If my child had a phone that didn't have capabilities of connecting to the internet, then they might not be able to use their phone. We don't even have 5G where I live. So there's lots of positives to having a smartphone, but the negative sides of it, yes, I don't disagree at all, are a big, huge problem. But I think it's the way we manage it and we teach our children how to be safe online, how to use a phone correctly, and to give kids other things to do other than be just online all the time.
Okay. And Emma, what would you say to that? I mean, are you saying that we should advocate for parents to give only a certain type of phone which doesn't have internet access, or are you advocating for the government to somehow block any internet access on or certain types of it? Because they've tried doing that and they can't, can they?
It's really hard to control the internet. It's really hard. But can I just say, in terms of what Kirsty's saying, yes, of course, parental controls are important and all of that, but it is so hard. Children, these digital natives, are incredibly smart. I was talking to a parent, a friend of mine who is fine with me talking about it, talking to her last night. Her 11-year-old daughter has been going in. She's done all the controls that she can. And she works in tech, Mike. She works in tech. She knows about this stuff. She has done all the parental controls and limits and time limits that she can set on her child's phone. And her daughter has been going in via Google and using all sorts of social media sites that she was not aware of. Kids are smart. This stuff is really easy to circumvent. It's very hard to have, to really control. And I understand about the brick phones. I do think there's a real demand for that you just have a phone that you can use to text your mum to say, I'm going to be late home from school, or I need I've missed the train, whatever, for safety. I do understand that. But my child is 3. He doesn't have a television. He's not having screens. As long as I can hold out, that is not a world that I am leaving him in. Absolutely not. I don't think it's doing our children any favors at all. I want children outside in the fresh air, rain or shine.
Yeah, well, Kirsty, that's the other thing, isn't it? I mean, if you say that, you don't have 5G in your area and so they can't use a mobile phone because they haven't got a signal, well, there was a time when nobody had a signal and nobody had a mobile phone. And I know that I'm going to be sounding like some kind of old fuddy-duddy here and say that when I grew up, I went out and my parents didn't really know where I was for hours on end, but I always managed to make it home. I don't think it's any more dangerous now than it was then, particularly. I mean, what's wrong with not being able to contact them?
I don't know if it's necessarily something wrong with not being able to contact your child, but I think it's, as my parents have said to me, if that was available when we were children, it was something that they probably would have had. So I don't know that you can liken it to when we were kids. I mean, I had a phone card, if you remember those, that's showing my age. My parents gave me a phone card loaded up that if I needed to call them because the bus hadn't turned up or whatever, I could get in contact with them. We don't really have phone boxes now for children to go and make a phone call. Yeah. Things have been taken away. And phones are of more use. And, my own child, my eldest, is going off to secondary school in September. She is one of the very few in her year group that doesn't have a mobile phone currently. Right. She walks herself to school. We're only a minute walk away from school. And we don't feel like she needs a mobile phone at the moment. She's got serious FOMO at the moment, though, because her friends have got phones. They're chatting in the evenings. But we are protecting her at the moment from that. But we know once she goes to secondary, it's going to be something that is going to happen, and it probably is going to be a smartphone because, like I say, she's not going to be able to use her phone around our local area, certainly. But other children, parents have reported when their kids have been stuck waiting for a bus and it's not turned up. You can do live tracking for buses now, checking bus timetables, train timetables and things. We want to give our kids that independence to go out and about. So, they're a handy way of keeping track of those things and giving your child some independence. It is a massive problem, the internet. It really is a massive problem, and I see it, as I said, with lots in my work with parents and with children and how it affects their mental health. And more does need to be done, and I totally agree that kids really should be outside and not stuck on phones, but I think there has to be good balance as well. Some screen time isn't going to damage your child, but again, it has to be regulated. You're the parent, you're responsible for what your child does at the end. I mean,
would you be someone, and people have said this to me, I'll come back to you in a second, Emma, would you be somebody then, Kirsty, who would say to kids, because I've had, sort of educators and parental experts say things like, don't let them bring the phone into the house, drop the phone in a basket at the door, you come home, you sit down, you have a family dinner, you don't let them disappear off into their room and go on Instagram for the rest of the night, and you don't really know who they're talking to. I mean, what we're being told here is that parents are not very good at that.
No, they're not. And that is something that I again, I deal with. I had a parent just earlier on this week saying that basically she came to me for help for what kind of rules and boundaries to put in place.
Right.
And there's a lot of parental pressure because other parents don't do these things. If all parents came together and had the same rules and boundaries, it would help massively, because, when their friends are allowed to do something and they're not. And, and I remember as a kid, but, no was no, and we just got on with it. And there has to be that. And that's why I say, giving your child the phone and having it as alone until they can show you that they can stick to the rules and boundaries, the terms and conditions, if you like, or the phone gets taken away from them. But, I think there was a study out earlier on in the year where children or parents were saying that, I think half of the parents interviewed or something were saying that basically they allow their child to have a screen at the table. Where's family time gone? When we're all sat on phones. It's not healthy. It's not a good way to be. But I would also point out that a lot of our children's phone addiction comes from their parents' phone addiction.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, you go out and about, and how many parents are wandering about with phones in their hands, even pushing the babies, not talking to the babies in pushchairs, sitting at meal times and things. And while I understand, parents want a break, they need a break from their kids, I understand that as well. You've got to understand the role modelling that's involved in being a parent. And kids learn from you at the end of the day. They learn what they see. They're always watching you. They're always listening, and understanding behaviours from you.
And I mean, Emma, we do live in a society now where kids expect everything, as soon as they want it, they want to have it. It's like, well, I want that, and parents will buy it for them. So, I mean, in terms of what could be done here, what do you want the government to do?
What do I want the government to do? I want parents to come together. I want them to demand that we have these brick phones if we need them for teenagers. I want them to demand that we have phone boxes, things like that, which Kirsty raises on a very valid point. Okay, bring back phone boxes, bring back the emergency fiver, bring back the phone card, bring back the things that make our children safe. The internet and the effect that it's having on our children's mental health is so serious that this is actually a national crisis. And when you talk to parents, it's not a minor thing. It may sound minor if you don't have kids. It's not a minor thing. I speak to hundreds of parents, Mike, who say, if I could go back and do one thing, I wouldn't have given my child a smartphone. The effect on their mental health is so extreme and so damaging to them. It's not making them happier. I know that boundaries are difficult. I know that saying no to your child is difficult. Making them eat their greens is difficult. My goodness, the arguments I had this morning just to get my child to brush his teeth, it's part of parenting.
Right.
And really, if you care about your kids, and I agree, the internet is addictive. I'm addicted. You're addicted. We're all addicted. The point is, let's just delay it. Let's at least let them have a childhood. Let them have some time reading books, talking to their friends, not coming home and carrying on this bullying world of social media in their bedrooms. It's just not good for children.
Okay. Emma, thank you very much indeed. Emma Woolf there, Kirsty Ketley as well, parenting specialist and a writer.